Morning, guys. Another video on Thanksgiving morning. I'm thinking family, big platters. My last video I talked about the Hydrobat. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. So this is a Hydrobat. It's a bat made of plaster. They're not cheap, and they've got to be super careful with them. What they do is they start to dry the bottom of your pot relatively evenly, as long as you have a even floor. If you have a floor that's thin in one side and thick in another, it's not going to work. So this is really for those who have the ability to create an even floor. The plaster starts to dry the clay just like the plaster at your wedging table, and you do not have to wire anything off, which is pretty awesome. It is a waiting game though. You're going to want to watch it. Don't pop it off. Don't try and pop it off until you know that it's just sort of dried. The other key part is to make the lips of your pot evenly consistent too, because what's going to happen is if your lip is too thin, it's going to dry a lot quicker than your bottom, and it's just going to be, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a shit show. So, and a waste of your time. So let's get started. So this is going to be 9 pounds, and you go, wow, that doesn't look like 9 pounds, Mel. How is that going to be 9 pounds? Well, I just took a sip of my coffee. We are going to center in pieces. We're going to start with this 6-pound ball. Then we're going to add this 4-pound ball. This is about 6.5. So we're going to get it started just like that. Now, why is the Hydrobat more difficult? Well, right now as I start, I just wet my hands and now they're almost dry. So the same great part about the fact that the plaster will dry the bottom of your pot, it's also going to dry the clay that's touching the plaster a lot quicker. So even right now, this extra clay that's here, watch this. Watch the magic of science. That's already dry clay. It's almost not leather hard, but it's definitely sticky. So we want to make sure that we are always adding water. So what I've done, I've coned this up. You've seen me do this several times, maybe not from the top. A lot of people are asking me, there's a lot of potters out there who have been pushing forward and back with coning. I don't understand why. I'm not saying it's wrong, I just don't understand it. So if anyone has a reason why people do that, please let me know. I have no problem learning something new. I find that my way works. So I don't do it that way. So what I've done with my first piece of clay is I've sort of coned it into, coned it up and then coned down into this sort of short flat disc. And now I know that this part is pretty centered again. This is starting to stick, so I keep on sort of getting stuck on that dry clay that the plaster bat is creating. When you're centering in 2 pieces, it is really important that this does not dip in, because when we put this extra piece on top, if it dips in, you're going to trap a giant air bubble right in the middle. So you'll notice that mine is sort of coned in sort of like a boob shape, like a sort of, I don't know, that thing that they do with the Olympic sport. Curling. It looks like a curling thing, right? That's what we're going to aim for. So now that that's centered, I'm going to take my second piece of clay here. I'm going to dry my hands off first. And with this second piece of clay, I want to make sure that the spaces here are all closed up. Again, air bubbles, right? And now I'm just going to try and sort of squish that right down on the middle, sort of press it down a little bit. All right, and now I'm going to start to center this top part. So I pretend that the bat's here, and I'm just going to sort of get a lot of control on here, wheels not moving fast. And now I start to cone down to get it to really stick. And now I'm going to sort of squish all the pieces together. So I'm going to start to cone from the bottom, take that part where they meet and sort of hang out there for a little while, start to cone up the rest. And now I'm working almost with 1 piece of clay, but the advantage I have is that that bottom part is mostly centered. So it's a little different than coning up and down 1 piece of clay, right? Because when you cone up one piece of clay, that top is centered and that last bottom part is the part that you have to work on, but this is sort of the opposite. You may notice from the sound of my wheel, here, I'll shut up for a little while, hold on. that I slow down and speed up my wheel very often. Some of you people are a little nervous of the pedal, so you take your foot off the pedal. I do not recommend that. As you become more familiar with the clay, you're going to notice there are going to be times when you need to do a little bit more with a little bit more control, and you will slow down your wheel. Like if I have a part of my wall that I'm pulling up that's a little thicker, I have found that my body learned that I have to slow down my wheel a little. That's going to be the same with centering too. So right now, if I want the speed of the wheel to help me, I'll speed up a little bit so I can push those clay grains in. But then I might go ahead and get a spot where I don't want to lose control, so I'll slow down just a little bit. A little side note on your pedal. So try and keep your foot on the pedal, because again, also when you're making taller, wider things, or a bowl with really thin walls, your speed is going to be significantly different for your first pull than your last pull. And if you get in the habit of taking your foot off, it's just you're not going to learn that. So we are making a wide sort of serving bowl dish, but it's almost like a cylinder with a curved bottom, but wide and tall walls. So as we said in past videos, whenever we're making something wide, we want to center the clay tall and narrow. This is a big piece of clay, so this is as narrow as it's going to get, but now we're going to start to coerce it out into a wider disc. So I'm pushing down on the center, and my left hand, although I'm opposite now, this is my left hand, because I'm in selfie mode, sorry. My left hand is sort of catching the clay as my right hand is pushing it down. Now again, with that Hydrobat, we want to be mindful of this extra clay that's getting stuck there. It's going to be a little more difficult to slide this hand back, so maybe you lift the palm of your hand, the puff of your hand a little higher so it doesn't scrape against the bottom. Pushing down, you'll even notice that I'm getting my whole probably face in there because I'm starting to use my whole upper body strength to push that clay down. Obviously, this is going to be better with a little bit of softer clay. And I'm going to start to push down. And this is when my upper body gets completely involved. And my dirty clay addict shirt, this is when an apron is probably a good idea, but we're just going to continue on. Sorry if my whole head is in the video. So what I'm trying to do is push this all the way out to the width of the Hydrobat. I'm going to try and use as much of it as I can and allow that to dictate how wide my pot's going to be. So what I've done is I've gotten the bottom to be sort of pushed down a little bit. I've gotten a lot of this clay out here because again, I'm going to open up a lot, but if I leave too much here when I open up, it's going to be just way too much. But remember that this back here is going to be all of this clay, and this clay becomes the wall. So you want to keep in mind that it almost will double, if not triple, on the side. I'm also going to start to pull back a little bit, all the way back here to sort of push that clay to the edges of that Hydrobat. Now, I want to be able to get my hand in here, so I can't go all the way to the edge. I'm gonna find my sponge and start to compress a little bit. Just gonna do a little bit of a compress. 2 hands, sponge so wet, all the fingers, and I'm even following it up with this hand. So this hand is right behind this hand, and with both hands, elbow pushed down, I'm compressing that floor all the way. It's not even the floor, I'm compressing the whole mound of clay, right? Until I get to the edge. Now, quick reminder from past videos, I don't want this clay on the edge to be sort of rounded like a donut. I want it to be sort of right there, perpendicular to the wheel head or to the Hydrobat. No space under there. Okay, so now I'm gonna open this up just like a cylinder. I'm gonna use my sponge though, because my fist I could use, but elbow issues. I could use my fingers, but it's probably not gonna be strong enough. So I'm gonna use my entire sponge and my backhand, elbows pushed down, wheel going fast. And I'm gonna push down as if I'm opening up that hole that I would normally open up. Now, super important again, we want this to be thick enough. I don't care if you want a really thin pot, you need a thicker base to handle 9 pounds of clay. So get that whole, porcelain thin out of the way. Now I don't have to account for the wire tool here. So I'm gonna go down here. I'm gonna tell you I have about a 1/2 inch. That's gonna be good. So what I'm gonna consistently try and do is keep everything a 1/2 inch. So I'm not gonna lose that 1/8 of an inch with the wire tool. So now I'm gonna start to open up, quote unquote. But remember, I don't want this to peel up. So I'm gonna use my whole hand, and this whole hand, this thumb is back here, sort of stopping the clay from going past where we want those walls to end up. My hand is helping to compress. My left hand, which is this one, is helping to compress this, but if it gets a little out of control, I push that right back in. Pulling. I'm doing with the wheel going about 75% because I really want the speed of the wheel to help me. I'm gonna compress that back in again. So the whole point is to not have that clay come off. We just wanna squish those clay grains to be part of the pot. Start to come out. And now I'm actually almost squeezing to pull that between my left fingers and my left thumb, with my right hand helping it. Take off a little caca. And now that lip has come up, so I'm gonna compress that right back into the wall because I want that to be part of my pot. Sometimes I'll start right back in the middle again to give myself sort of a head start. Now I wanna go all the way to the edge of where I want my pot to end up. Because I want as much volume on the inside of this serving bowl, pot, vessel, until I get to the top. And now what I want to do is compress that lip. So it's the same as when you're making a regular cylinder. You always want to sort of compress the floor. You're just doing it on a much larger scale. You're going to see me do this often, by the way, this back and forth. And part of it is because I talked about how important it is with a Hydrobat for the bottom to dry evenly. And again, the biggest, the most common error I see is that you guys make, or people make, not you guys specifically, will make this part right here too thin, and then you'll definitely get a fracture, a stress fracture, or S-crack, or whatever you want to call it. It's actually going to be a stress fracture. All right, so now we've got the floor of our pot, and we're going to start to pull our walls. Now I'm going to aim for sort of something that kind of goes a little bit of an angle. I want the inside to be round like a bowl. And I'm gonna start to pull my walls. So I start down on the bottom where the Hydrobat is, where the clay is starting to get a little drier. And I'm gonna start to pull up. And again, I'm aiming for a volcano, just like I would a regular cylinder. I don't wanna aim out yet, especially because we've been doing so much to the clay that we don't want it to give in to the gravity. Start to pull those walls up, up, up. Compress that lip. I'm gonna get in here to get a real good look at where I am. I have about 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the Hydrobat to the base of my pot. Super important again, thick lip, guys. The thick lip is going to give it stability. It doesn't be triple thick. It just can't be as thin as so many people make them. Start down here again. Notice I slowed my wheel down when I was down on that bottom to really kind of hear that line of the song a couple of times more. Remember, it's a record player. Reference to my old videos. But then to compress, right, I speed up. Again, maybe this video becomes an importance of keeping your foot on the pedal. All right, so now I've got myself probably about 4-inch high walls. I'm starting to sort of let the walls kind of come out a little bit more into a bowl. I've got a bit of a thicker lip. And now again, I just want to be really concerned with the inside there. So I'm going to take a hard rubber rib. You can take a big one, you can take a small one. You just don't want to use a big one. I wouldn't use this because that goes past the center. We only want to go with the center to there, because when we use this whole thing, then you're touching this part too many times. I don't know if that made sense. So I'm going to use this sort of, doesn't this remind you of like 1980s headbands? I think I bought it just for the pattern of it, but I always find it, which is cool. All right, so I'm going to start down on the bottom, elbows close together, start at the center where I am a little thinner, and I want to compress going out. And what the hard rib does is it helps out a little bit because it also takes off a little bit of the extra clay. So I allow you to cheat that way. Sort of like trimming the inside of your bowl, which I'm against, but it does help to sort of even that out a little bit. And then again, like I do on a lot of my plates and my bowls, if you want, you can use the roundness of this bat to sort of create that transition from floor to wall. This bat specifically has it's not a perfect oval, which is kind of cool about it. I'm trying to clean it. This one has one angle that's a little rounder than this side. So you can get two different sort of shapes with that. See that? So this one's a little more right angle-y. This one's a little bit more of a gradual slope. So it's really up to you what you prefer, or if you just want to use your hands, whatever you want to do. I'm going to actually use this on the inside too, make it a little rounder. All right, so again, I've talked about it before. You can go ahead and give yourself that that smooth bottom with the rib, right, where you're sort of just smooth and flat. Or if you wanted to, you can give yourself that little finger thing that happens. I'm gonna just go smooth because I just don't want to risk it being uneven and even with the Hydrobat, because I just don't want it to dry unevenly. So I'm gonna leave it as is. And that's pretty much it. I'm gonna go ahead and get my wood tool or my plastic shark tool here. I want to get off as much as I can, just like a cylinder, and that's because maybe you don't have a bat that's big enough to trim something this big. You don't have to worry about getting off that extra clay under there because it literally will just pop off, which is super cool. That's pretty much it. I will try and follow this up with a trimming video, although there isn't really much to trim, so I don't even think it's that necessary. So again, I'm going to review a couple things. Hydrobat, great thing to purchase. If you're going to do a lot of plates, buy a bunch of them. And then the second thing is keeping your foot on the pedal. Didn't realize this video was going to turn into that. But anyway, hopefully you can get a lot of mashed potatoes in here, or now everybody eats Brussels sprouts, right? That's a lot of Brussels sprouts. Yeah, visualize that. Anyway, 9-pound clay serving thing. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you again. Bye.